You'd be a high-risk pregnancy anyway. I mean, let's be honest, Danica. You're not exactly in your prime. That's what he said to me after I lost the baby. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my husband shattered into dust. The moment those words left his mouth, the room went silent. Not in the literal sense, he was still talking, justifying, rationalizing, pouring himself a neat 2 fingers of whiskey like he was giving a boardroom presentation, but I didn't hear any of it. Not really. I was curled up on the same living room couch where I'd once clutched a positive pregnancy test to my chest and sobbed tears of joy. Now I was clutching my stomach where my baby had been just 2 weeks ago. Or maybe where she still was in some ghost-like way I couldn't explain. Because even though the doctor had said miscarriage, I still felt pregnant. Hollow but full of something indescribable. Pain mostly. I didn't know that moment would change my life. But it did. That moment cracked me open. Let me rewind just a little. My name is Danica, but most people call me Danny. I'm 39, or at least I was when all of this started. I had been married to Michael for nearly 12 years. We met in college, fell hard and fast, and married by the time we were both 27. He was ambitious, magnetic, and brilliant with words. I was the quiet type, artsy, observant, loyal to a fault. When we were younger, we talked about having kids all the time. But then came the job promotions, the house upgrades, the savings goals. He always said, "Let's wait until the time is right." And I believed him. I waited. I waited while I supported his marketing firm through its messy startup years. I waited while I handled our finances, made our house a home, and turned down creative job offers because stability mattered more. I waited through every carefully calculated postponement. And then, at 39, after years of trying and failing and trying again, I finally saw those 2 pink lines. I didn't even wake him right away. I just sat on the floor of the bathroom at 3:12 a.m., staring at the test and smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. I wanted to surprise him. I imagined a little gift box with baby socks and a note. I even started looking up dad mugs on Etsy. But life doesn't play out the way you plan it. Especially not when you want it the most. I lost the baby at 10 weeks. No heartbeat. No explanation. Just gone. I cried for days. I couldn't breathe through the grief. I felt like I'd let the universe down. Like my body had failed me. Failed him. Michael didn't hold me when I sobbed into my pillow at night. He didn't talk about it except to mention almost casually that maybe this was for the best. He started going to the gym more. Took business trips I hadn't heard about until he was already gone. And then one night, that night he came home late, loosened his tie like a man weary of dealing with irrational emotions, and dropped the line that broke me. You don't get to grieve something you never really wanted. That was the moment I knew. He had never wanted a child with me. He had outgrown me. The loyal, dependable Danica who put her life on pause for his dreams no longer fit the aesthetic of the man he had become. It wasn't just the loss of the baby. It was the realization that I was grieving alone. The next morning I woke up before he did. I stared at the ceiling and made a promise to myself. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. I just wanted myself back. So I started small. I went to therapy. Weekly at first, then twice a week. I journaled. I made lists of things I had loved before I became a shadow in my own marriage. Sketching, watercolor, music that made me cry in a good way, long drives with no destination. I dusted off my old portfolio, the one I'd built back when I had dreams of running my own design firm. It had been sitting in a closet under old tax documents and boxes of Michael's client files. But when I opened it, I saw her. Me. Before I dimmed my light to let someone else shine. I created a new Instagram account quietly. I called it @DannyCreatesAgain. I posted a sketch. Then another. I got 10 followers. Then 20. Then 100. Meanwhile, Michael barely noticed. Or maybe he didn't care. He spent more time working late. He stopped asking how I was. He assumed I'd stay like I always had. But something was shifting. Quietly. Steadily. I no longer woke up dreading the day. I started going to local art markets on weekends. I signed up for a design conference in Seattle. Alone. I hadn't traveled alone since my 20s. I sat in those panels surrounded by strangers who didn't know my grief, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Inspired. I was healing one invisible inch at a time. And I could tell that scared him more than if I had screamed at him or begged him to stay. Because I wasn't clinging anymore. I was letting go. And when a woman lets go of something that once defined her, the people who benefited from her silence start to panic. I could feel it in the air before he said anything. That jittery, unspoken tension that crept into a room when a man started losing the grip he never thought he'd have to fight for. Michael had always been confident, cocky even, but lately he watched me like I was a puzzle piece that didn't fit where it used to. He didn't notice when I was drowning in grief. But he noticed when I started breathing again. The first real crack came on a Sunday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table sipping coffee, sketching a new design concept for a client I'd met at the Seattle conference. My tablet was propped beside me, stylus in hand, face glowing in the soft morning light. I didn't even hear him walk in. "Since when do you work on Sundays?" he asked. I didn't look up. "Since I started getting paid for doing what I love." He blinked, then forced a tight smile. "That's cute. A little passion project." I looked up then. Unbothered. "Actually, it's a rebranding project for a local wellness company. It's my 4th client this month." He stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. I realized then how little he knew me anymore. How little he ever had. "Oh," he muttered, pouring his coffee. "Well, just don't let it distract you from real responsibilities." Real responsibilities. As if his emotional absence didn't cost me more than any job ever could. As if all the years I spent managing our home, our finances, his travel arrangements, his business dinners didn't count. But I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just smiled, serene, defiant. Because the most dangerous woman is the one who no longer seeks your approval. Later that week he asked if I'd be free to attend his firm's networking gala. "It's mostly business," he said, waving a hand. "You don't have to stay long. Just smile and do your thing. You're good at playing the supportive wife." Supportive wife. There it was again. The expectation that I'd be a perfectly groomed extension of him. His decorative asset. The woman who stood quietly at his side while he basked in applause. But I said yes. Not to please him, but to remind him. To remind him of who I really was. The night of the gala, I wore a sleek navy gown that hugged every curve of the body I had spent months reclaiming. My hair was swept into a low twist, lips painted a quiet war red. As I descended the stairs I saw him freeze at the bottom. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered, surprise, admiration, and something else. Something like fear. We arrived at the venue and as expected he slipped into his element. He shook hands, laughed too loudly, dropped humble brags like confetti. I floated beside him, nodding, smiling, sipping champagne with just enough disinterest to unsettle him. Then it happened. One of his colleagues, a woman named Adrienne, approached me at the bar. She was kind, elegant, and a little curious. "You're Danica, right? I've been seeing your designs all over LinkedIn. That wellness rebrand? Stunning." Michael's head snapped around. You know my work?" I asked. Adrienne laughed. "Of course. You're killing it. Everyone in local creative circles is talking about at Danny Creates again. I didn't realize you were Michael's wife." He smiled then, tight, rehearsed. "Yeah, she dabbles in design." Adrienne looked at me puzzled. "Dabble? She's the keynote at the Women in Branding Summit next quarter." "That's not dabbling. That's dominance." And just like that, the lie crumbled. He had no idea. No clue that I had built something quietly, deliberately, right under his nose. No idea that my work was being noticed, shared, respected. He tried to laugh it off later in the car. "I mean, you could have told me you were taking all this so seriously," he said. I turned to him, voice calm and razor sharp. "And what would you have done with that information, Michael? Taken it seriously or told me I was being dramatic again?" He didn't answer. Just drove in silence, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing still in his control. After that night, the shift was undeniable. He started asking more questions. Subtle ones at first. "Who are you working with now? Are you getting paid for all this? Do you really have to travel for that conference?" He started hovering. Once he asked to review, one of my contracts. Said he just wanted to make sure I wasn't being taken advantage of. I smiled, handed him a decoy draft, and watched as he tried to poke holes in something he couldn't even understand. Because here's the truth no one tells men like him. You can't control a woman who's no longer afraid to lose you. One morning he found me packing. Going somewhere? He asked, trying to sound casual. Oh, I said. Client retreat. I'll be gone 3 days. He stared at the suitcase like it was filled with explosives. You didn't ask me. No, I said, zipping it shut. I informed you. I didn't wait for permission. I kissed him on the cheek like he was an old friend I'd outgrown and walked out the door. And for the first time I didn't look back. Because I was building a life that no longer revolved around making him comfortable. I was building me. I came back from Los Angeles to a clean house in cold silence. Michael had made a point of clearing the kitchen counters, fluffing the throw pillows, and even lighting one of my favorite candles. Like he was trying to stage some kind of domestic peace offering. But the air was wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Like the house was holding its breath. I made dinner, he said as I dropped my suitcase by the stairs. I glanced at the table. Chicken Alfredo. His favorite, not mine. That's nice, I murmured, walking past him. He followed me to the bedroom, hovering like a shadow. You didn't call much while you were gone. I opened my closet, calmly selecting a change of clothes. I was working. And networking. Building something. His tone sharpened. So that's your excuse now? Too busy for your husband. I froze, then turned to face him. Too busy being treated with respect. Something I don't always get here. That shut him up. Because he knew it was true. Michael had gotten used to my silence. My nodding. My obedience. The version of me that bent herself backward to meet his expectations. But that version of me was dead. And her ghost was not coming back. The next few weeks were strange. He alternated between overcompensating, leaving sweet notes offering to help with my design work, and veiled jabs. Sarcastic comments about my little hustle. Passive-aggressive digs about me, trying to prove something. But the real unraveling began when he tried to log into my laptop. I caught him one night in the office, sitting at my desk, screen open, his hands stiff on the keyboard. What are you doing? I asked quietly. He flinched like a child caught stealing cookies. I was just checking something. You left it unlocked. I stepped forward. Michael, why are you in my files? He stood up abruptly. Because I needed to see what this really is, Danica. All these late nights, these trips. I needed to know if this is about work, or about someone else. There was not concern, control, not love, possession. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I held my voice steady. You don't trust me. Fine. But don't insult me by pretending you ever supported this. He started pacing. You're changing. Acting like you don't need me. Like I'm just some prop in your success story. I looked him dead in the eye. I don't need you, Michael. And that terrifies you. Silence. He stood there stunned. Because I'd said the one thing he feared most. That the version of me who had once revolved her life around him had spun off into her own orbit. And he couldn't catch me anymore. After that he got smarter. Sneakier. Emails went missing. My design draft started auto-deleting. A brand contact emailed to ask why I hadn't responded to their invoice agreement, when I had twice. At first I thought it was coincidence. Until I noticed something strange on our shared home Wi-Fi account. Multiple logins from devices I didn't recognize. One night I caught a reflection in the dark window. Michael standing behind me, watching over my shoulder as I worked. You're sabotaging me, I said quietly. His jaw tightened. I'm protecting this marriage. I stood. By trying to destroy everything I've built? I'm keeping you from forgetting who you are. No, I said, my voice sharp and final. You're trying to keep me from becoming who I'm meant to be. He left the room that night, slamming the door behind him. I didn't cry. I opened a private browser, changed all my passwords, created backups of every client file, every design, every transaction. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. Called my sister. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Ever since Michael told me she disrespected him by calling him out at a family gathering. He manipulated me into believing she was toxic. That I was better off without her. But when I heard her voice, warm and surprised, something in me cracked open. "Danica," she asked. "Oh my God. Is everything okay?" And for the first time in months I let the truth pour out. About the isolation. The lies. The sabotage. About how I wasn't even sure who I was married to anymore. She didn't lecture me. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just said, "Come stay with me. Even just for a few days. Clear your head." That night I packed a bag, just the essentials. My laptop. My sketch pad. A few changes of clothes. And the necklace my mother gave me before she passed, because I knew I'd need something to remind me I came from strength. When I stepped into the doorway, Michael appeared behind me. "Where are you going?" he asked, voice low and threatening. I turned, calm and resolved. "To a place where I'm allowed to exist." He grabbed my wrist, but I didn't flinch. "Don't do this," he hissed. "You'll ruin everything." I looked him square in the eye. "No, Michael. You already did." And with that I walked out into the night, breathing freedom for the first time in years. But even as I drove away, I knew this wasn't over. Because men like Michael don't let go without a fight. And the next move he made, it would test everything I had left. I didn't sleep the first night at my sister's place. Her guest room was small, barely big enough for the twin bed and a dusty desk covered in old photo albums. But it felt like safety. Like breathing room. Like a life raft I hadn't realized I needed. And yet, as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, every corner of my body buzzed with fear. Because I knew Michael. Knew the way his mind worked. When he couldn't manipulate the present, he'd rewrite the past. When he couldn't control me with love, he'd try to control me with fear. Sure enough, the storm hit 2 days later. I was sipping coffee in the kitchen, laptop open, catching up on work I'd fallen behind on when my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. "Danica Miller?" a cold voice said. "Yes. This is Officer Reynolds. We received a domestic disturbance report tied to your name and current location. Do you have a moment to speak?" My blood ran cold. "What?" "We received a claim from your husband alleging theft and mental instability. He says you've taken marital property, including sensitive business materials, and is concerned about your emotional state. He's filed for an emergency protective order." I felt the room sway. My sister walked in and saw my face pale. She rushed over. "Ma'am," I said into the phone, steadying myself, "I am not a danger to anyone. I left my home voluntarily. I have not stolen anything. I'm a freelance designer and everything in my possession is mine." "He's lying." The officer paused. "If that's the case, you'll need to file a counterstatement. But in the meantime, we need to notify you that he's filed for a temporary freeze on shared assets pending investigation." The call ended and my hands trembled around the phone. He was trying to freeze me out. Lock me out of our joint accounts. Cut off my money. Discredit me legally. Destroy my credibility with clients and brands I had worked so hard to build. "I told you he was dangerous," my sister said, rubbing my back. I shook my head. "This isn't just about hurting me. He's trying to ruin me." And that's when I realized he wasn't going to stop until I was begging at his feet. Or worse, until I had nothing left. That afternoon I went to a local legal aid center. I explained everything, his surveillance, his sabotage, the false reports, and now the asset freeze. The paralegal, a sharp-eyed woman named Erin, looked me in the eye and said, "You need more than a lawyer. You need documentation proof. You need to build a case." I nodded, heart pounding. "I have backup emails. Screenshots. Logs. I've kept everything since I suspected he was messing with my work." "Good," she said. "You're going to need every piece. Because men like this, they know how to look clean." Over the next few days I dug through every file, every digital trace of his abuse. Emails where he subtly threatened to pull the plug on my business. Text messages gaslighting me about things I knew had happened. My therapist, who I hadn't seen in months, agreed to write a statement based on my past visits, highlighting emotional manipulation and control. And then came the final straw. A letter from a brand deal I had been working on for months. A collaboration that could have launched my design studio into six-figure territory. The email was curt. "We're disappointed to hear you're under investigation for breach of contract and are pausing all collaborations until the matter is resolved." Attached was a message forwarded to them, from Michael's email. He had sent a warning to every brand contact I had, posing as a concerned partner. Claimed I was unstable, fraudulent, and potentially misusing funds. He had even attached falsified invoices, mocked-up files that painted me as a con artist. I sat there staring at the screen, breath caught in my throat. He wasn't just trying to hurt me. He was trying to erase me. "I need to go back," I whispered. My sister stared at me. "Danica, no. That man is dangerous." I stood, resolve hardening in my chest. "I'm not going to him. I'm going to fight him. On my terms." I filed a restraining order the next morning, citing emotional abuse, digital sabotage, and defamation. Aaron helped me draft a cease and desist for every contact Michael had messaged. I contacted the brand directly, attached full evidence of the falsehoods, and asked them to investigate the email headers themselves. By the end of the week, I had filed a full civil claim for defamation, identity tampering, and malicious sabotage of income. Michael didn't take it well. He showed up at my sister's driveway 2 nights later, yelling my name in the dark, drunk, slurring insults, shouting that I was ruining his life. My sister's husband called the police. Michael was cuffed on the spot for violating the emergency order. As the red and blue lights flickered off the walls, I stood on the porch, heart trembling but eyes dry. The man who once held all the power in my world now looked small, petty, unraveled. But I knew this was just the surface. Because buried beneath the sabotage, the lies, the digital warfare, was a secret I hadn't even uncovered yet. A betrayal that would redefine everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I thought I had uncovered everything. I thought the lies, the sabotage, the gaslighting, and the malicious defamation were the extent of Michael's darkness. But what I discovered next cracked something so deep inside me, I wasn't sure I'd ever recover. It started with a package. A manila envelope arrived at my sister's house. No return address, just my name scrawled in thick black ink. For a second I thought Michael had sent it. Some twisted letter. Maybe a threat. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were copies of 2 documents. The first was a bank account, hidden in his name only, with transfers totaling over $250,000 in the last 3 years. The second was a marriage certificate. Not ours. His. From 7 years ago. To a woman named Rebecca Collins. My stomach turned. I flipped through the document, my eyes scanning every line, every official seal. The date was 2 years before we met. The divorce date. Never filed. My knees buckled beneath me. I sat on the cold floor of my sister's hallway, clutching the papers as if they might vanish in my hands. He was still married. All this time. Michael Miller, my husband, my business partner, the man I trusted with my career and my future, was a fraud. We weren't even legally married. I was never his wife. My mind raced, flipping through every memory like pages in a cursed photo album. Our wedding had been small, private. A beach ceremony. No courthouse. No marriage license I had ever seen myself. He insisted he handled it all, said it was already filed. I never questioned him. Why would I? Tears blurred my vision as I opened my laptop and started digging. I searched Rebecca's name. Found her on Facebook. Her profile was private, but her picture was visible, her face vaguely familiar. And then it hit me, she had shown up at one of our gallery openings 2 years ago. Michael had brushed her off, called her an old college friend. He looked her in the eyes that night. Hugged her. While I smiled, clueless, standing 10 feet away. I reached out to her. Messaged her, unsure if she'd even respond. But to my surprise, she replied within hours. I've been waiting years for someone to contact me about him. We arranged a call. Rebecca's voice was calm but brittle, the sound of someone who had learned to survive trauma by freezing the pain. I married Michael when I was 24. He was charming at first. Sweet. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. He isolated me, controlled me, told me I was crazy when I caught him cheating. I sat in stunned silence. He left one night, she continued, said he was going on a business retreat, never came back. I filed for abandonment, but the court process stalled. He never signed, never responded, and I didn't have the money to chase it. She paused. I didn't even know he was pretending to be married to someone else. I couldn't breathe. Rebecca and I had been living parallel lives, both manipulated, both erased. I'm sorry, she said, softer now. You didn't deserve this. Neither of us did. It was then I understood why Michael had sabotaged everything, why he had to tear me down, destroy my business, ruin my reputation. Because if I ever found out the truth, he'd lose everything. Our assets, our home, technically his. He had crafted the perfect trap, making me believe I was his wife while never giving me any legal hold on anything. I wasn't just a victim of betrayal. I was a victim of calculated fraud. That night I met with Aaron and a new attorney. Together we filed charges not only for defamation and harassment, but bigamy and financial fraud. Rebecca agreed to be a witness. We gathered everything, every message, every fake invoice, every digital fingerprint. And we took it to court. Michael didn't see it coming. His attorney tried to spin it, claimed he thought his divorce was finalized. But the records, the documents, the trail of lies, it all told a different story. My lawsuit wasn't just civil anymore. It was criminal. And for once, Michael's charisma couldn't save him. He was indicted on multiple counts. His accounts were frozen. His digital slander campaign backfired when brands reviewed the email headers and confirmed the sabotage. He lost his job, his reputation, his money. Everything he tried to steal from me was stripped from him. I stood outside the courthouse the day of his sentencing, watching the press swarm around him. He looked haggard, sunken, unshaven. His eyes met mine briefly through the chaos, and for the first time ever I didn't feel fear. I felt freedom. Rebecca stood beside me. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. We were both survivors of the same storm. But I had one final card to play, and it would hit Michael where it hurt most. And no, it wasn't revenge. It was something far more powerful. I never planned to see Michael again after the sentencing. But life has a strange sense of timing. A year later, I was invited to speak at a national women's entrepreneurship conference in Boston. It was a full-circle moment, standing in front of 2,000 women sharing my story of betrayal, survival, and rebuilding. I didn't hold back. I talked about the gaslighting, the fake emails, the smear campaigns, and the moment I discovered he was never even my husband. The room was silent. Then applause erupted. Tears flowed. Hugs followed. Women came up to me one by one whispering, "That happened to me too." That moment made all the pain worth it. Because I had turned my breakdown into someone else's breakthrough. I stayed afterward for photos and conversations, and as I stepped outside into the cool night air I saw him, Michael, sitting alone on a bench across the street, slumped over, unrecognizable. Gone was the crisp suit, the polished charm. He looked like a man who had lost everything, and he had. I hesitated for a moment. My first instinct was to turn away. But something inside me said, "No. Let him see who you became." So I walked right past him. Confident. Radiant. Powerful. He looked up, eyes wide. "Danica." I paused. Looked him dead in the eye. "You can't erase me," I said softly. "Not then. Not now. Not ever." His mouth opened, but no words came out. I walked away without waiting for a response. Because I didn't need one. He no longer had power over my life, my name, or my truth. In the year since everything unraveled, I had rebuilt my brand under a new name. Danica Rising. It wasn't just a business. It was a movement. I opened a physical gallery in Chicago, showcasing not only my work but the pieces of other female artists who had faced adversity. Each one told a story of survival, scars turned into beauty. I started a podcast, wrote a book, partnered with Rebecca to launch a nonprofit for women escaping financial and emotional abuse. We called it Unsilenced. I even adopted a little girl, Lena. A bright, strong-willed 7-year-old with eyes full of curiosity and a laugh that filled every room. The first time she called me mom, I cried for an hour straight. Michael once told me I was too old to be a mom. Funny, because I had never felt more like one. Not just to Lena but to myself. I had mothered myself through the darkest pain, nurtured the broken pieces, and created a life that was entirely mine. My biggest revenge? Living fully, loudly, unapologetically. There's a quote I used to have framed in my studio. Michael tore it down once, said it was dramatic. But I hung it back up, this time in gold foil. It reads, "They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. And today, I bloom. Every single day. And if you're listening to this, maybe you're in the middle of your own betrayal. Maybe someone made you question your worth, your power, your truth. Let me tell you something. You are not erased. You are still here. Still rising. And your story? It's just getting started. So don't forget to like, comment, and share if this story moved you. And hit that subscribe button because we drop new real-life stories of betrayal, survival, and justice every single day. You won't want to miss what's coming next.